I'm going to have to pay some attention to my cat soon. Okay, Twitch is nearly up. It's pretty much the only thing holding me back at the moment. Come on, Tick Tick. Up you get. Come on. Come on. Aha! We have Lap Kitty. Okay. Okay, so stream is good. Okie dokie. Everyone say hello to Tigger. Yeah, tick tick tick. Yeah. And also say hello to Sakastipanda, who's hiding over there behind my drink. Okay, so I'm gonna have to get my cat off my lap because I don't want him getting the bad vibes from the legendary rant. 2 minutes into Angry Astronaut's latest video. He's a great guy actually. I follow him a lot on YouTube, among many other streamers. So feel free to check out his streams, and by no means am I trying to steal his content. I just want to sit there and rant along with him because it's so good. He's only got 30,000 subs. This guy should have hundreds of thousands of subs, in my honest opinion. He is a theory crafter in regards to space colonization and exploration, and he's right up there with the best. Alright, Tick Tick. Yeah, so let's have a look at the video. It's great. No Tick. Okay, I gotta get him down. Being an Australian, I've got my Vegemite on toast. I am ready to go. I am ready to rant. I'm gonna need a good cigarette as well. Okay, there's a couple of things I want to bring up for like straight away. One, let's have a look at radiation on Mars surface. So I'm just gonna go by probably maybe Mars 1? No. Millisieverts and all that sort of stuff. Now, it's not just how much radiation people are exposed to, but I'll get into that later. Yeah, let's have a go.
Last time I did this, I got really angry. Okay, the last time I did this, I got really angry. So, do I really want to pop a blood vessel here? But I've got to listen to what my therapist is saying. Look at landscapes that you really like and read topics that you enjoy. That is the key to complete relaxation, right? Well, that's what she says anyway. So, yeah, this is beautiful. I love the Martian landscape, and let's...
It's funny, my therapist tells me like the same thing as well. It's like, you know, it's not that I even have a therapist. I basically am my own therapist. So my therapist tells me, while you're at work, just take each thing as it comes. Let it flow and relax while you do your stuff at work. You know, because if you just relax, everything will flow from one thing to the other. Except for when every single fucking thing's a problem. It's like co-workers and stuff, like because they don't experience it, like they're not working in my area or whatever. They just probably don't get the fucking half. Oh, the zip. All right. Yeah, cigarette time.
Read something from space.com. 5 ways to die on Mars. This isn't off to a good start.
It's off to a fantastic start. What are you
Let's see.
talking about?
Radiation exposure is among the top health risks for Mars astronauts. Okay.
That's not
we're
the top
off
health
to a
risk.
Whole line of BS, but wait a minute, I'm going to give it a chance here. Okay. So aside from radiation, what's it saying? The most immediate threat to human health on Mars is the low pressure of the planet's atmosphere. What? Okay. Quote, if you are unprotected on Mars, your blood would boil even at ambient temperature, unquote. Well, yeah, and if you stepped out an airlock on the ISS without a spacesuit, you would die too.
Or like if you crashed into someone with a forklift, I'm pretty sure they might die. Or like if someone accidentally crosses the road at the wrong period of time, or actually falls asleep in the middle of a fucking frozen, like a landscape, like, you know, negative 15-degree nights or whatever, and they passed out in a ditch on the side of the road because they had one too many drinks. So many different ways to die, and Mars ain't even the most lethal.
And if you jumped out of an airplane at 40,000 feet, you probably wouldn't do very well either. I mean, what the hell are we talking about here? Okay, let's try this again. And by the way, they're quoting a planetary research scientist at the NASA Ames Institute. So, pretty much of a brainiac, I would think. So, gotta know what he's talking about. Let's see here. The next thing on the list of things that will kill you on Mars is the carbon dioxide atmosphere. Quote, we need to breathe oxygen, unquote. Really? How shocking. Let's see
Unbelievable.
what else it goes on to say.
Who would have
There's
thought?
no free oxygen in the Martian atmosphere. You cannot breathe this gas. You would die of hypoxia within minutes. Is there a point to this article? All right, another one is...
I'd also like to bring up that there's places on Earth where you can die from a lack of oxygen too. Say, for instance, down in the bottom of a manhole, down in basements, like a volcano explodes or something and you're in the wrong spot. Lakes exploding and overflowing because they've had so much gas that's absorbed into the lower layers of the lake that basically all that needs to set it off is a little earthquake, and the whole thing just bubbles like an effervescent bottle of soft drink. It goes, and then gas just kills thousands of people. It has happened multiple times in recent history.
Dust.
In recent history, in the last 100 years.
It is also finely grained and abrasive, and all of those traits are bad news for the human lungs.
Bad news for the human lungs? Try COVID. Try fucking working as a sandblaster. Try being a cigarette smoker. Try working with asbestos. Dust getting everywhere. My knees. I wash them most of the time. I get fucking coated in fine dust particulate. It's called concrete.
You would die over the course of weeks if you were exposed to Martian dust. But he doesn't really explain how you would be exposed to Martian dust, and also he doesn't bring up some of its most dangerous qualities. And dust storms, for that matter. This is really incomplete and seems kind of useless, actually. Okay, now I knew this one was coming. Radiation. The lack of a global magnetic field on Mars coupled...
Now, I'd just like to say that, okay, so the lack of a global magnetic field on Mars means radiation hits the surface. Now, what type of radiation are we actually talking about? Are we talking about... I'm probably talking out my ass here. Forgive me if I am, but like alpha, beta, gamma. Like, what type of radiation is it? Is it the type of radiation that sticks to a particulate and radiates off and goes firing off fucking radiation everywhere? Or is it the type that comes down, hits, and bounces off? Or, like, just basically settles in whatever it's touching? Like, when we're talking about radiation, just how radioactive is, like, say, a cubic meter of Martian soil, as opposed to just, like, say, the radiation that you're exposed to from the sun? Because if you're down in the middle of a tunnel, you're probably more worried about the radiation that's in the tunnel than you're worried about the radiation that's hitting the surface. From my own knowledge, generally you're talking about maybe a couple of meters of packed earth or water. Certain types of radiation absorbing materials, and when I say absorbing materials, I mean dissipating materials. So it's not something that gets radioactive from exposure, that's something that just mitigates and stops the radiation from splitting your thingamabobs and exposing you to millisieverts per hour, blah 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 blah.
With the planet's thin atmosphere means that high-energy cosmic rays and solar particles shower the Martian surface. And then this guy says space radiation is mellow in some places on Mars. Really? It's not that bad? Well, that's actually true. We expect it to be higher where there's hydrogen near the ground. We expect, but we don't have any evidence for it. Oh, okay, and in any case, it's something that over the course of months would end up killing you as well. Really? And what evidence do you have for that? Okay, screw this article. I've had enough of this nonsense. Let's move on to a different article. Okay, popular science isn't doing much good either. It's talking about oxygen toxicity in a closed environment and spontaneous explosions from pure oxygen and having to vent off the oxygen from the habitat to keep
Martian colonists are going to be breathing in pure oxygen environment? That's news to me.
from being toxic, and then saying things like significant technology development is required because the tech isn't there right now.
You mean what they use down in what a saturation diver uses, like nitrox or whatever?
The technologies needed for this habitat can work here on Earth, but in practical use in a space environment, it would require miniaturizing them, decreasing cost, and increasing their reliability. So how does all this stuff work on the ISS? How do they keep the oxygen safe and non-toxic there? And how has this technology been developed if it supposedly doesn't exist? Oh yeah, and by the way, this article also says that women shouldn't go to Mars because the radiation levels are too high and the risk of cancer is too high for women. Alright, I've had enough of this. Let's talk about some real dangers for Martian colonists.
Yes.
And debunk some of this nonsense, because I've had enough of this crap.
Fucking straight on. I'm gonna guess on a couple of them. I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be insufficient protection, insufficient in situ resource utilization, all sorts of stuff like that. So like, rather than focusing on how deadly Mars is, just focus on how to solve the problems. It's not that deadly. Like, using current technology right now, if we could put fucking certain things on Mars, we could negate all of it. We could be living on Mars now. We could have been living on Mars 40 years ago. Anyway.
Hello, welcome to another episode of The Angry Astronaut, and welcome to the
Hey, I had a shave.
Me. I hope all of you approve now that I've gotten rid of that.
I'm gonna have to shave now.
Grizzle that's been on my face for a very long period of time. Not that I'm any less ancient as a result, but I hope that you approve of the new look. Okay, enough of that. So, you've probably been able to tell from the beginning, from the introduction of this video, that this is a topic that I have a lot of passion about. To rephrase, I get really, really pissed off about it. And
As you should, because basically so much of the information and like articles and stuff that you can find and read and people talk about is less about solutions and it's more about problems. And when they say what the problem is, they don't even go into detail of it. They're like they're just like, they're not even actually theorizing. It's just like saying shit like it's rote science, like without even actually going into depth, without it going into detail, without examining why.
that's the fact that there are ridiculous about when they're talking about
Experts.
colonizing Mars, or rather the absurdity of colonizing Mars, as most of them say, that really we shouldn't even try. That Mars is just simply too unsuited to human life for us to even make the effort. And
I reckon send them all to Australia. It's unsuitable to human life.
the dangers that they bring up, ironically enough, are the ones that aren't all that dangerous. The one, of course, that is the most common is radiation. Radiation, radiation, radiation. And I'll tell you something. After spending a whole lot of time studying the nature of radiation on the surface of Mars, from instruments and information gathered for us by our probes, I have come to the conclusion that this is an overblown topic. Completely.
Exactly. It is a massive exaggeration. He's probably going to say exactly what I'm going to say. But the reason why is because we're not talking about radioactive material on the surface, or even under the surface. Though, admittedly, there is quite a bit, and it's easy enough to shield against it. But what everyone talks about when they're talking about radiation on Mars is that they're talking as if it is plutonium. Like, as it's just fucking solar radiation. I mean, oh my god. I mean, yes, it can kill you. But too, anyone with half a brain doesn't go out without wearing protective gear. And you don't spend much time on the surface unshielded. And even the time that you do spend on the surface, like decontamination afterwards, like that's a pretty standard thing. Anyone who works in like a nuclear reactor, or anyone who works in a mine that mines uranium, I mean, fuck. And trust me, Australia's got a lot of expertise there. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, in terms of uranium mines. And we'd be able to send people there who could deal with that radiation with no fucking issues.
Ridiculous, and I think probably we're able to tell a little bit of that from the introduction. Yes, the radiation on Mars is significantly higher than it is on Earth, but it's significantly lower than it is on the Moon. As a matter of fact,
And it's a different type of radiation as well.
Unprotected on the surface of Mars for years. Well, with the spacesuit, of course, but that's about it. For years, and only have a elevated risk of developing cancer. And by elevated, maybe a 5% chance of developing cancer by the end of your life. It's a ridiculously small risk compared to the real dangers that exist on Mars. And yes, there are dangers there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Mars is beautifully suited for human colonization.
That's the whole point.
It is not. We can't breathe the air. The temperature is oftentimes entirely too cold for us to survive. And there are things like planet-wide dust storms, which can be dangerous in ways that are seldom actually explained to us. Instead, they talk about water.
Okay, like I'd like to go out on a limb there. One of the reasons why dust storms are dangerous is because of the fine size of the particulates of the particles. You need to think about it like asbestos. If you get it in your lungs, you're probably going to develop a lung condition. If it gets in your gear, it's probably going to ruin the gear. And because of how fine the dust particles are, it means that all the seals and everything have to be pretty much perfect. Not 100% perfect, but there are ways to get around this, and there are ways to deal with it.
Out solar energy and that sort of thing as being the greatest danger, whereas I'm here to tell you that that definitely is not the case. And that's only one of quite a number of dangers that exist on this alien world. But at the same time, there are many other so-called dangers that are easily rectified, easily guarded against, if we only have the common sense to do so. And
this guy, that's exactly right.
As you're about to see. So let's not tarry around any longer and keep looking.
Stop talking about the problems and start talking about solutions.
Let's get on with the topic. The dangers of the red planet and the exaggerated supposed dangers of the red planet that we can very easily survive if we just put our minds to it. Let's get on with it right now. Okay, let's go ahead and start out with what is supposedly the greatest or one of the greatest threats to future Martian colonists and explorers, and that's radiation. Because
Now this is going to be good. I think he's probably going to go in depth into the different types and exposure levels and all that sort of stuff.
because of the lack of a magnetic field, the concept is that Mars is continuously bombarded by deadly radiation and cosmic rays with absolutely nothing to stop it. And so it's like stepping into a nuclear reactor. And yet, we've determined that that's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, Mars does actually have the remnant of a magnetic field. It was 10 times stronger than we expected when the InSight landers set down on Mars 2 years ago.
And just to get onto point there, I mean, we're not quite to the stage where we can terraform a planet and all that sort of stuff, but I'm sure that there's some sneaky way that with a bit of engineering and a bit of ingenuity and maybe a couple of decades or perhaps a couple of centuries, it may be possible to restart Mars' magnetic field.
But years before InSight made these discoveries, the Curiosity rover made further discoveries and measurements about Martian radiation that frankly came as a complete surprise to a lot of people. The prevailing attitude was that because we were detecting certain levels of radiation in orbit, that it would be the same at the surface because the Martian atmosphere is so damn thin. Not true, Curiosity told us. In spite of the thinness of the Martian atmosphere, and perhaps the remnants of its magnetic field have something to do with this as well, the radiation levels were nowhere near as high as we expected. And actually, when Curiosity moved close to a cliff or something along those lines, the radiation levels dropped off drastically.
Now, I'm probably talking out my arse here, but even though Mars has a very thin atmosphere, when you're looking out from an orbit, like from one of the rovers, and you're looking at the atmosphere, and like this is just like conceptual stuff, because like I do understand the topic, but I'd have to research it again. But wouldn't there be some form of Rayleigh scattering possibly happening to make it so that when you look up at a Martian sky, it's not pitch black during the day?
So, with the aid of the Curiosity's instruments and in conjunction with orbiting spacecraft, we were able to create a much more accurate map of Martian radiation. And so here it is in all its deadly glory, and let's
let's look at it. Okay, so we've got our dosages, like REMs. Like, how many REMs does it take to kill you? How many REMs is a lethal dose? I should know this. I mean, I can build a nuclear bunker. I mean... Okay, so the dose of radiation, just going by US government instant Google response, is the dose of radiation expected to cause death to 50% of an exposed population within 30 days. Typically, the LD30 is in the range of 400 to 450 REMs, received over a very short period. Now, if we have a look at this map, there are areas which receive 10 or less, and the highest areas, the highest, is up to 20. In some parts, like say on the surface of like maybe Olympus Mons, like the largest mountain in the solar system, that dose might be higher, but this is far from a lethal dose. Just saying.
try to explain it in terms of that female we're saying that shouldn't go to Mars because it's too dangerous, and put her somewhere on the Martian surface and see how long she lasts. Now, NASA recommends a 175 REM limit for a 35-year-old woman over the course of her entire career. In this location, she'd be taking
that's
about
10 to
13
15 years.
REMs per year, which means if she stayed there for 10 years unprotected, she would still not exceed her exposure limits.
And this is the exposure limit, right? This is the exposure limit that astronauts, once they receive, cannot go up to the International Space Station again. Now, we have dozens of test subjects who have gone up into orbit, been up there for years, and basically come back. And yes, there is a spike in an incidence of cancer and all that sort of stuff. But this is the ISS we're talking about. This is in low Earth orbit, which is kind of technically still in Earth's atmosphere, but okay. Anyway, so the whole point is that arrest my case.
And that's if she didn't have any kind of habitat and nothing but a spacesuit. 10 years and she still wouldn't exceed her limit.
Type of habitat, that's the
Now,
important
of course,
part.
if she was stupid enough to go to some
A
of the
radiation
red
suit.
areas and stay unprotected for 10 years, she might go over her limit. But what does
Fukushima.
that really mean?
Chernobyl.
Well, if she exceeds her limit,
The Ural
that
Mountains.
actually is based on a maximum 3% lifetime excess risk of cancer mortality. 3%. You'd get a lot worse odds if you were a smoker. Now, of course, things like solar storms and coronal mass ejections might theoretically make things a lot worse.
Now, this is actually fact. And one of the problems with it is that you can't really predict it. And I can't remember exactly how fast a coronal mass ejection travels and how fast the radiation travels, whether or not there might be warning received in time to be able to get into shelter. In other words, underneath a couple of, like a meter barricade of H2O, or like under packed earth. But yes, this is a significant risk, and it's something that is just gonna, like, you're gonna have to live with and deal with. I mean, it's like an air raid siren. You hear the air raid siren, you get the fuck undercover. It's survivable. I mean, people survived the Blitz. Anyway.
For Our Lady astronaut, assuming that she was dumb enough to not have some sort of shelter available when these things occurred.
And not just that, they're also talking about a standard spacesuit. Okay. Like, if you had, say, like a lead-lined suit. Remembering that the gravity on Mars is significantly lower than on Earth, and that you could basically wear anti-radiation body armor, like similar to what actual workers who work with radioactive isotopes and all that sort of stuff, like fucking people who do take X-rays and all that sort of shit, right? I'm sure there is a way to mitigate that risk entirely, even if they are on the surface wearing a spacesuit.
Which she would, and let me give you one quick example of that. Our not-so-dumb lady...
Especially if you're wearing a hard suit, like an exoskeleton or something, and that said exoskeleton didn't have like a visor or whatever, but actually had proper shielding, and like say like your exposure to the outside world might be through a camera, like VR technology, like say inside out fucking tracking systems with cameras on them. You could easily have like a VR system set up so that you have cameras on the outside, they pick up information, they pass it to the inside of the helmet, completely shield the body. Like, why can't you do that? Do you know how much a fucking spacesuit costs? In terms of development and in terms of like actual production? And do you realize that on Mars, essentially, you could almost get away without wearing one? Like, apart from the pressure problems and all that sort of stuff. But it's nowhere near as bad as what it's actually made out to be. Even though the atmosphere is wrong and you can't breathe it, if you were exposed to the Martian atmosphere and depressurization, all that sort of stuff, it's not the immediate death that people assume it is. You can have a cut in your suit and you can patch it in time without dying. Easily.
The astronaut would spend a good chunk of her time in a place like this, the Martian X House, which won a contest sponsored by NASA for 3D printed structures.
And this is a rant. This is like part of the rant. This sort of stuff actually makes me really angry when, like, it's like the angry astronaut. Like, this stuff actually makes me angry because although people absolutely fucking hate it, and even the angry astronaut hates it, the simple solution is to live underground. Okay, only go on the surface when you absolutely need to. There's no point having a habitat above the surface. I mean, you do have dust storms, you do have incredibly high winds, even though the winds basically mean nothing. You can have like a 500 kilometer an hour wind in the Martian atmosphere, and it feels like a gentle breeze, because there's so little mass moving with that wind that you can virtually not feel it. Like, it's like a flicker on your skin in a 500 kilometer wind. Well, it's probably not that good, but I'm just giving you like a little bit of an idea. But I don't think that habitats like this, I'll just switch to the webcam. I don't think that habitats like this are the answer. Okay? I think a habitat like that, but turned upside down and underground, I think that's the answer. Okay? I mean, and plus, by doing that, you actually spoil less of the natural environment of Mars. And trust me, in the decades to come and the centuries to come, people are going to want to preserve the natural habitat of Mars. I'm not like the natural ecosphere. I should probably not say ecosphere, but like the natural landscape, because people are going to want to study it for millennia to come. Okay, and terraforming would utterly destroy that. We are more than capable of living there without it, but at the same time, there are so many opportunities to use the terraforming of Mars, because it has lower gravity, has less atmosphere, and use it as a jumping point for the rest of the solar system, that I think that it may be a sacrifice that's worth making. After we have people on Mars and we determine that there is no native life, and after we determine that the planet is basically up for grabs, then I think that immediately terraforming should be initiated, and most likely by the use of robotics and gigantic terraformers, like say like something like machines the size of, say, you know, the Bagger 9000. Right. You know, like machines like that on the surface of Mars. Fully self-contained, automated, and just terraform the fucking living fuck out of it. Like, if you're wondering how in situ resource utilization is going to happen on the surface of Mars, how we're going to take enough soil and all that, like, and polar ice and all that sort of stuff and process it, you're looking at how we're going to do it. Okay? Machinery. These things, some of these operate with a crew of 5 people. 5 people. Okay? We're talking about like some of the biggest machines ever made on Earth.
And this thing is about as radiation resistant as you can get without going meters and meters beneath the ground.
Why not? Why not go meters and meters beneath the ground?
Built by robot and you.
I know, like, people, like, why not just like have an observatory, like a shielded observatory? If you want to be on the surface and look around on the surface of Mars, just fucking have an observatory. Have like an elevator that goes up to the point, but like keep everything below ground, because it's safer. Especially if you have like a micrometeoroid, like, or probably not a micrometeoroid, but if you have like a meteor impact or something like that, you probably want to be underground, not on the surface. But I think like the sheer, and sorry, this is probably an Australian thing. It's probably also other country thing. Like it's an American thing, it's a Japanese thing. Kaizen, right? You ask people how to solve the problem. How do we eliminate the threat of a radiation hazard? Move underground. Do it. Is it harder to live underground than it is to live on the surface? No, it's actually easier. Anyway.
Uses things like regolith-based concrete and also basaltic fiber, both of which are found on Mars for construction materials.
So in terms of like creating habitats on the surface, we actually got to worry about like proper architecture. Is it harder to build a structure on the surface, or is it easier to build something underneath the surface? Do you have more structural support under the surface than you do on top of the surface? The answer should be self-evident, ruling out tectonic activity. And let us not forget that Mars is virtually a dead world in terms of tectonics.
The shape, as you can see, protects it from the sun's radiation, except when the sun is closest to the horizon, and there you get the maximum.
You'd be safer underground in Mars than you'd be above ground in Tokyo.
Very thorough in its
I'm not fucking kidding.
It's made of Martian regolith concrete, Martian basaltic fiber reinforcing it, expandable polyethylene foam, and a substance called HDPE.
I should say Tokyo.
Essentially Martian plastic made from locally gathered ethylene and methane. And on top of that, it has expandable polyethylene foam. And the windows, as you just saw, are pretty involved as well. The windows are constructed of primary and redundant pressure panes, which are 3 centimeters thick and made of in situ manufactured polycarbonate, and they're secured to the structure by HDPE frame bonds, which are also locally manufactured. And you're getting to watch the entire process as the robot builds this thing, windows and all, in a shape and structure that would give it the maximum amount of protection from radiation. Plus, the interior core, called the mechanical core, would serve as a radiation shelter in the event of an extreme radiation.
Okay, so one thing when it comes to concrete, from personal experience working in construction, concrete is not infallible. Concrete does fail. Concrete does get cracks. You can create structures out of concrete that last for a very long time, but it's probably not the safest thing to do first. Build underground, and then once you can risk it, perhaps build above ground. Like, I mean, concrete is concrete, but let's face it, we're going to need so much mining and all that sort of stuff. Just to maintain a habitat and just to maintain an environment that's conducive to human life, that wasting it on building above ground structures when you can excavate and remove the material and then use that material for other purposes, such as creating metals, generating oxygen, generating water, like and rocket fuel. If you wanted to go your base level of most efficient level of resource utilization, you would build underground.
Storm. A structure like this would provide almost complete protection from radiation, and then our lady astronaut would also have a cumulative decade to spend on Mars otherwise. Not too bad at all.
Not bad at all.
However, if our astronaut were caught in the open and saw this bearing down on her, she would have very good reason to be terrified. According to a study called Dust in the Atmosphere and Its Impact on Human Exploration by the NASA Engineering and Safety Center, dust storms, not just the dust, are a considerable threat to human exploration and colonization. You see, Martian dust is not just full of poisonous perchlorates, it's also electrostatically charged.
Also electrostatically charged. Yet another reason to go underground. Okay? If you have electrically static... electro... bleh. If you have charged dust, basically, then that does significantly complicate things. So, I mean, it's great to have like a window on the Martian surface and be able to look out from your habitation and look at the vast Martian landscape. Which, let us not forget that due to the fact that Mars has a much smaller diameter than Earth does, it's less of a horizon than you might think it is. Unless you're at a vertical elevation, like say on the side of a cliff on one of the mountains, which significantly also receive less radiation. So building into the side of a cliff might be a much smarter idea as long as it doesn't get smashed on the face by sandstorms. In terms of like predicting weather patterns and stuff and examining existing weather patterns. Again, build underground first, and then build habitations and like build trial habitations, like experimental habitations and cliff faces on the sides of mountains and in gullies and ravines and all that sort of stuff. And that's when you can have your lovely landscape view, because trust me, you can see a hell of a lot more from the top of a mountain or the side of a mountain on Mars than you can on Earth.
Matter of fact, our investigations of Martian regolith indicate that it is regularly struck by electrostatic discharges, essentially lightning as depicted here, and that could wreak havoc with our equipment on the Martian surface. The report describes the extreme problems that Apollo astronauts had with lunar dust, which is far less damaging, we think, than Martian dust, and the impact it had on their EVA suits to the point to where they could no longer carry out additional EVAs because of the dust.
And this is because it gets into the seals, it gets into like all the life support equipment that's built into the suit. It gets into the suit. It gets into the suit through the seals. The surface on the moon has actually been described as being like talcum powder. And because the surface on the moon is not just like a little layer, it's like meters of talcum powder. It's like walking on perpetually on quicksand, especially with the low gravity. And if the dust on Mars is even worse, yeah, well, I mean, you can put people on the surface of Mars and get them to walk around. I mean, rovers and stuff are quite capable of moving around on their tracks, but they definitely exert less pressure per square inch than a human foot does, due to the length of the track, the width of the track, and how much weight of the vehicle there is. There's actually many tracked vehicles on Earth that exert less pressure per square inch than a human foot, meaning that you can basically get run over by a tracked vehicle and survive.
The report goes on to say, quote, abrasive properties of dust accumulating on surfaces and penetrating systems could lead to failure of air generation and delivery, carbon dioxide removal, fire detection causing false alarms and suppression, EVA suits, rovers, windows, visors, and
And something he hasn't raised yet, that's an extremely important thing, though any successful colonization of Mars must use nuclear reactors. Has to, because if you're using solar power generation, you have a photovoltaic film or a panel. Do you know how quickly that gets covered in dust on Mars? Like, just conceptually thinking about it, right? Now, that's already a problem here on Earth, cleaning and maintaining solar panels. That's actually why a lot of solar panel farms, and Mr. Angry Astronaut, if you ever watch this, I hope you agree with me, but I mean, I'm just throwing more information into the mix. So, solar power farms on Earth. Hey Alex, how you going? Oh fuck. Yeah, I'm doing a comment on like a YouTube vid. Is there gonna be anything ongoing smart insane by a magic star dragon? Or hamsters? Yeah. I'll react to that in a sec. I'll just finish my rant. Photovoltaic films on Earth alone already pick up more than enough dust and need regular maintenance, and this is why a lot of solar power farms are actually being built on water, and they're being built in like lakes and on water reservoirs because it's actually kind of cheaper to maintain the systems. Anyway, getting onto the chat. It's been a while since I've seen you, Alex. Granted, I haven't been streaming your favourite shit, so it's probably my fault. I hope you like World of Warcraft, because in a couple of days that's basically all I'm going to be playing. Is there going to be anything ongoing smart insane? Well, Magic Star Dragons, I mean... God, where do I get into that one? And hamsters. Man, you always know how to throw a wrench into the works. I don't even know how to respond to that one. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I've you probably already know, but maybe about 2.5 weeks ago I fractured a rib. So I've been having fun recovering from that. And yeah, so it wasn't the cartilage in my ribs. It was actually a fracture, and 3 years ago when someone gave me an x-ray, they fucked up and they didn't x-ray the right spot, so I fractured the same rib now twice, and possibly 3 times. Yeah, so I haven't been able to stream as much, I've just been like sleeping and resting, and getting all that sort of stuff. And Sarcastic Panda's been sitting there looking at me going, "Why don't you get on the computer more?" Yeah. I haven't even been able to drink as much, to be completely honest.
Optics. If critical life support systems completely fail, well, we know what the results of that are going to be. So here's my question.
Here's my augmetics. It's called meloxicam. Best shit ever. It's not even an opioid. And I've got a fractured rib and I can't even feel it. I actually need to be very careful to actually not lie down on that rib. Like lie down on the side. So I'm still at work, still working away. And work has actually got that good so far recently. As you probably know, I'm a forklift operator. And yeah, so I drive around forklifts all day. And the good news is today, for the first time in, well, since I moved into the department that I'm in, ever, today, every single pick slip that I had, parts were able to be located and orders were able to be completed. Go team! I'm actually I'm very happy and pumped. Nah, it's been alright. I have had to change my diet though, so I'm eating a little bit more healthy, and taking vitamin supplements and all that sort of stuff. So I'm actually been cooking myself food again, even though I'm still relying on plastic forks and plastic plates and plastic spoons. Half the time. But yeah, like I've actually been cooking some food, and I'm actually a decent cook. Watch out, girls. But yeah, like I've actually had to make sure I be a little bit more healthy. That's one reason why I've been streaming less, because like the first thing I do when I want to stream is I usually make myself a drink and have a couple of drinks and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, so I cut down the alcohol as well, which is probably another positive. Yeah.
Which is worse? Something that might kill you with a 3% chance of you developing cancer later in life?
If you get a chance, like go back through this whole the whole stream and like watch it from the beginning, because like I've just gone over like all the points and stuff that like people complain about, like colonizing Mars and all that sort of shit, and like together with the angry astronaut in my commentary, we basically just debunked most of it. Yeah, replace it with a carapace. That's it.
or an electrostatic poisonous cloud.
That's it.
That can
Just get it
cause your
removed.
equipment to fail, especially if you're unlucky enough to get caught in the middle of it. And yet, what do the experts talk about? Not dust storms, they talk about radiation.
They talk about radiation. Yeah, like the thing is that like, they're talking so much about radiation and problems and stuff like that, and they're not actually realizing that the biggest threat isn't radiation; it's like dust. Like, and in terms of like actual radiation, like you've got different types. You've got like alpha, beta, gamma, and all that sort of stuff. Like so, like say, like if you're in a nuclear bunker, if you are in a nuclear bunker, what are the most dangerous types of radiation? Right? So you got gamma rays. Right? Now gamma ray is basically something that just spits off. Like it's something that goes constantly. And then you've got like your alpha and beta particles and stuff like that, which are more dangerous when they're ingested. So like different types of radiation react very differently. Some of them have a higher half-life than others. And cosmic radiation has one of the shortest half-lives of all, in terms of like once it actually hits a substance. Like say like a I actually go into the actual thing. If I can find something that explains it good enough, because like I actually know how to build a nuclear radiation bomb shelter. If nukes ever start flying, like in you're in Australia, hit me up, because I'm going to be the first cunt with an excavator. I'll be digging my bunker already, even if I have to steal the excavator, right? Yeah. Okay, so contamination with radioactive fallout is not immediately threatening. Okay, like so when you go outside of like once objects become irradiated from an actual nuclear detonation, those objects have a half-life, and generally the more dangerous stuff has a fairly short half-life. And the primary radiation hazard from fallout after a nuclear detonation arises from external exposure to penetrating radiation released from the decaying radioactive particles, rather than from internal contamination exposure from breathing or ingesting radioactive material. Right? So basically what that's saying is that, yeah, if you get exposed to a shitload of radiation, you're probably going to die. But like a couple of weeks after, like 2 or 3 weeks after, your biggest exposure is going to be to the other type, the type that you can ingest or be exposed to on your skin. So like you go outside like fallout shelter and you're covered in this shit and you got to do like a decontamination shower. Now the actual types, yeah, beta particles, alpha emitters and beta. This probably goes into it like a little bit more in depth. What is the difference between alpha, beta, gamma, and neutron radiation? Gamma rays and beta particles, or beta particles, make up most of the fallout radiation immediately after a nuclear detonation. Gamma rays are the immediate hazard to life. There are 4 types of radiation. Alpha particles cannot penetrate most matter. A piece of paper or the outer layers of skin is sufficient to stop alpha particles, which is the reason why it's dangerous when ingested, because then it's inside your skin. And alpha particles are what you're going to be picking up from food that you might eat. Like say for instance a crop of corn that's been sitting out, has been exposed to dust that has been contaminated by a nuclear explosion. You go to eat that corn and all of a sudden you've got the fucking decaying neutrons going all through your body. Right? Beta particles can be stopped by a layer of clothing or a few millimeters of a substance such as aluminum. Now, gamma and X-rays are a little bit different. Several feet of concrete or a few inches of lead are required to stop them. Also, about a meter of water or a meter of earth will also do the same thing. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. No, I have not seen a photo, but I can only imagine. It's probably not much worse than a normal person's hand, but yeah. So, what type of radiation is on Mars. Solar energetic particles and galactic cosmic rays. Okay. Now, if we go to... Here we go. X-rays and gamma rays. Alpha particles. That's pretty close to the right information, but I need something that's easier to read. I'm trying to find it just using like wiki stuff. Now, when they're talking rays, I imagine they're talking gamma rays. Let's have a look at solar radiation. I'm guessing it's more gamma stuff with like a little bit of alpha. I could be wrong though. So like even when you're Googling, it's like what type is the type of radiation on Mars? Gamma? Yeah, produce gamma rays. Right? There we go. Okay. Oh, for fuck's sake. Stop with the ads. Okay, so Egelblud said this because the most powerful particles in the air also penetrate the Martian soil. When impacting the surface, the blah 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 from space produce gamma rays and neutrons. Right? So, as we already know, shielding against gamma rays are penetrating several feet of concrete or a few inches of lead. Right? So, obviously, if you build a habitat on Mars, you want to put underground. Right? And in terms of like suits and stuff, like lead suits, remembering that the gravity on Mars is less than it is on Earth. I mean...
Or if they do talk about dust storms, it's restricted to what it could do to the sun's light and the impact on our solar panels, things like that, which could easily be dealt with
Now, the only thing I'm saying is that like the surface of Mars is not like coated in alpha like radiation particles. Now, where that's important is when it comes to dust and stuff like that, because if the dust is producing shitloads of alpha radiation, then basically all that dust and particulate that's getting in through the cells of your spacesuit and or getting into like your like into all of your equipment is going to be still dangerous even after it's like underground. You know, essentially that's what I'm saying. Like once you isolate the dust from the suit, that's fine. You clean it out, give it a good vacuum, blow it out into the atmosphere, right? Safe, relatively safe. Though I might be wrong. I'm not by any means a nuclear radiation expert. I know how to survive from nuclear fallout, but that's different.
Nuclear power,
anyone can do that.
Hydrogen fuel cells, or solar power generated from orbit and transmitted to the ground via microwave, like I talked about in a previous episode.
The difference is that nuclear radiation, like from a nuclear explosion, the particles that end up being on the ground are emitters of radiation. That's different to like Martian. I wouldn't call it regolith. Is the term for Martian like dirt and dust regolith? I can't remember. I know it is on the moon.
So many solutions to this problem, and the least of our worries when it comes to dust storms. And here's something else that would bother me a lot more than radiation. Fresh meteorite impacts, and this is one that was found by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter.
This might be why you want to build underground rather than on the surface.
By the way, and they also found a bunch of smaller ones, as you can see there. A very potent threat. In fact, it is estimated that there's at least 200 fresh meteorite impacts on the Martian surface per year.
Only 200?
What would happen to one of these habitation structures if one of these things hit it? It would be disastrous. The end for the colony, really, or at least for that particular structure. And yet...
Yeah, Alex, that was the funny response to the NASA announcement about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We have a brand new announcement to make about the moon, and everyone all over the internet was, they're about to announce that it's actually made of cheese.
Does this get talked about? Not at all. Now, these impacts can cause another dangerous phenomenon on Mars, which, again, none of the experts talk about, and these are Martian landslides, unlike their terrestrial counterparts.
Now, this is actually a massive thing, and it's something that will come into play in terms of any terraforming or any colonization, is that when you start changing the biosphere, sorry, I shouldn't say biosphere, when you start changing the ecology, sorry, I shouldn't say ecology, when you start changing the area ecologies, maybe? I don't know what the Latin word for Mars, like the Marcology or whatever? Yeah, well, the moon's hard. You can colonize it, yes, and it's even possible to do so with today's technology, but it would be quicker, in fact, to terraform Mars. It'd actually be quicker to terraform Venus than it would be to terraform Mars, actually, to be completely honest. Yeah, because the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, whereas Mars has a tenuous atmosphere, and Venus has an absolutely fucking massive, thick atmosphere. So, yeah, so Venus is easier, followed by Mars, and then Moon. In terms of habitability, for humans though, I'd say in terms of descending difficulty, it'd be easier to live on Mars, and then easier to live on the Moon, and then easier to live on Venus. Moon because basically you'd have to farm a hell of a lot of regolith to produce the materials that you'd need, and also water is probably a more finite resource on the Moon than it is on Mars, though there is actually plenty of water on the Moon, surprisingly. If you have a couple of these guys work on the surface of the Moon, you would probably be able to generate enough water just from the regolith. At least based on what we actually know right now. But it'd be easy to do that on Mars than it would be to do on the Moon, and it'd be a lot harder to do that on Venus than it would be on Mars. I mean, though, if I remember right, there's a chemical process for converting sulfuric acid into water. So if you created floating cities in the atmosphere of Venus, you might be able to actually convert the atmosphere into oxygen and water. Yeah, gotta worry about the Void Dragon.
these things can move at speeds of up to 360 kilometers an hour and continue for tens of kilometers. And we figure the reason for this is the
Yeah, so picture your mudslide. So like picture like was it the Brazilian, the mining mudslide? Right, so picture this. Right? But a million times worse on Mars. Which again, is why it's more important to actually build underground than to build habitations on the surface of fucking Mars.
the lack of friction that exists in the Martian regolith. The less friction you have, the further the debris can go, and anything caught in the debris could be seriously damaged, and any damage to delicate life support equipment could be cataclysmic for a Martian settlement. Again, a threat that nobody talks about. Who gives a damn about radiation when we have things like this? And by the way, the experts do have a point when it comes to the hostile nature of the Martian environment, and therefore you need a really good environmental suit.
And what I'd like to actually say, yeah, like craft worlds are actually okay. So a craft world, the best way to put it is it's called a O'Neill cylinder. This is a craft world. Alright? We can build one right now with the technology that we have. It would be expensive, but we could have a couple of million of them. Actually, we could have probably more like billions of them, possibly even trillions of them, in orbit of the sun right now. Basically, in order to create soil, all you need is like biota, which is like bacteria and all that sort of stuff. And if you were to harvest a small, like say, small moons or large asteroids, you could pump out thousands of these things. It's mostly just because people still have the idea of like terra firma. Right, so like the land beneath your feet. So we are still technically a planetary species, but in terms of like what we do and how the economy functions day to day, I mean, it's basically just exploiting resources on our planet and goods and services. And I'm sure you've heard all sorts of things about service-based economies. The economy in an O'Neill cylinder revolves around service. So it's a service-based economy, and it's also basically about producing life support. Okay, so artificial gravity and water and so on and so forth. So basically the cylinder rotates. So it's not, and this is what is different, was what a lot of people won't actually tell you, but rotational gravity isn't the same as actual gravity. So what happens is the cylinder rotates, and due to the centrifugal force, you get pushed towards the outside of it. But it is different from normal gravity. It is actually different, and there are perceptible differences. So like say for instance in a habitat like this, if you were to be in a plane flying through the middle of it, you could hover, anti-gravity, no gravity, basically. Well, not anti-gravity. So because like you're in the center of it. And but you could make a couple of these things that are like 10 kilometers long and just like rotate. And if we go by the actual like the diameter, sorry, surface area of a cylinder, we make the radius, no, we make the height. Yeah, so we make the radius about a kilometer, and we make them about 10 kilometers long. That's 69 square kilometers, or is that right? Right? Something like that anyway, I can't. It escapes me. But say if you made like 100 of the things, like that's you know, basically like 6,900 square kilometers. so on and so forth. And you could do it. Like, you could create nations of these things that are connected together by trade. And basically, the only reason why it isn't done is cost, and because the habitable level of the Earth is currently, although I wouldn't say sustainable, right? But what I'd say is that it's easy enough for everyone to get enough food. Now, the projected maximum population of this planet using all available resources and all available power generation and all that sort of stuff, surprisingly, you get a lot of people talking about like how Earth has like 6 billion people and all that sort of stuff right now. There was like, I don't know, 1.5 billion people on the planet like a couple hundred years ago, or something like that, and it's an exponential growth curve. So in about projected population of Earth 2050. Yeah. See if I can get some simple answers. Okay, so 9.7 billion by 2050, right? But what about Earth 2200? 8.8 billion in 2100, and that's mostly due to like a decline in birth rates, because as people live longer, they'll have less children. Push it, India, China. So the main reason, like, you can go through like all the documents and stuff like that, but the point is if you like follow a growth curve, so like population of Earth 1000 AD. Alright, so in 1400 AD, the population was, what, 400 million. Now, Earth's population right now, current Earth population, and this is with like advancement in science, 7.5 billion. That's 2 years ago. So if I was to like draw a paint graph and just rely upon that as like an actual, like a thing, so I go, boop, shit. Fucking, yeah. Okay, so if we got 0.6 billion, put that about there, and so 10 times that, that's about here, roughly. And we go from like 1400 AD to now, that's up to there. Whoop. Probably went more like that. Now if you look at in terms of like that growth scale, this is how I predict population growth, right? Not like a machine would, like an actual fucking, you know, like fuzzy logic, right? So we double the time period. Which is about there. So we'll go like a realistic estimate, like maybe something like that. And we double the population. So we'll call it, that's from whatever to like 0.4 to, well, 0.8, I don't know, I suppose, to 8 billion. So that would be about, So treat as like a logarithmic sort of like thing. That would be like so like 8 billion, maybe about 20 billion in 2400. Like that's my guess. Like a really rough sort of like estimation. But you could always go like the paperclip maximizer. Have you heard of the paperclip maximizer, Alex? So we create an artificial intelligence that's helping a business produce paperclips, and it decides to enslave and convert everything on Earth into paperclips. And in a couple of million years, the entire universe is made out of paperclips. It's actually really good. Paperclip maximizer.
Effort to discover the fate of the universe, reasoning that certain cosmologies will result in any given bit of matter eventually becoming part of a paperclip.
And you actually have futurists who have done the math. They did the math. But yeah, basically, like rough math. Anyway, so like an O'Neill cylinder. Okay, what are the benefits of living on an O'Neill cylinder? Basically, one, you're not on Earth, so if a fucking meteorite hits it, you're not dead. Two, you're not limited to Earth's resources. I mean, basically, everything that we use currently in like technology and producing resources and all that sort of stuff can be found in space on asteroids. There are more moons and planets and harvestable resources that we can get in space than there are on Earth. By a very, very wide margin. I mean, no, like that's the thing. Like the paperclip maximizer figures out a way to make more paperclips using a machine made out of paperclips. It's actually it's really good. But yeah, anyway, the sooner that we live on space, the better, because it extends our ability to survive. And I mean, like, who knows, in like a 1,000 years or something, we might be able to put people in cryosleep. In terms of the human spread throughout the universe, in order, depending on how fast our actual speed of travel is, if you're traveling even at like 0.5 of light speed, right, you can colonize the entire known universe within a matter of a fairly short statistical time frame. So like before the end of the universe. But there's also something called the trying to remember the name of it. So things are actually traveling away from us at higher than light speed. So there are things in our universe that we'll never catch up to. But things in our local area, the sooner that we begin doing it, the more that we'll be able to spread, and the more of our area of the universe that we'll actually be able to colonize. There are hard physical limits. Unless we invent faster than light travel, we won't be able to actually colonize the entire universe, because if something is spreading away from us at faster than the speed of light relative to our own position, even if we're traveling at the speed of light to try and catch up to it, we'll never catch up to it. Right? Hard to explain. No, it's not hard to explain. It's actually really simple. Yeah, so the paperclip maximizer, its memory cores are made out of paperclips. So like a bit on it will be shuffling a paperclip from down to up
something that's easy to move around in, something that's going to be form-fitting, something that's going to be less bulky and less...
But yeah, there are very, very impactful reasons why we should not stay on this planet and why we should begin colonizing even our local area of space and the solar system as fast as possible, because it gives us a head start. There are different solutions to the Fermi paradox, which is if there are so many intelligent races on the galaxy, why can't we see them? Why haven't we heard from them? Why haven't we detected any sign of their existence? We could possibly be the very first. And as you know from your own study on the the Warhammer 40k universe, there's a very good potentiality that anything that we encounter is not going to be friendly to our race, right? In terms of like, yeah, and like the more people that get off Earth, the less people are stuck on Earth. You know, like keep it relatively pristine, I suppose. But yeah, as soon as we start encountering like alien races and stuff like that, everything's gonna go fly out the window, because what Star Trek and like other like Star Wars and all that sort of stuff is, aliens are alien, right? Morning Light Mountain from a book series by Peter Hamilton, I believe, is a perfect example. It's like a hive mind that basically exists as one consciousness, and all of the animals living on one planet are basically an extension of its consciousness. It basically just says, okay, I've got a server bank, I'm going to push out all these commands, it's incredibly hyper intelligent, and all of its drones do its bidding, right? Rather than being multiple consciousness. So we could encounter like an alien race, and it looks as an Ender's Game is a perfect example as well, if you've ever read that book series. And one of their drones could be completely worthless to them. It could just be like a fingernail as part of its body. And we could encounter an alien race that thinks that human beings are a fingernail of part of our society and culture, whereas we are all individualistic. But I suppose, like, if you think of a hive mind mentality, I suppose that might be society in general. Like, we all have these expectations and like how our society is supposed to function. We all try to fit into that society, or most of us anyway. And so in a way we are actually a hive mind as well. But we could encounter an alien race that could look at an individual person of one of us as like a good of barter. So it's like, okay, yeah, okay, let's initiate trade. I'll have 200,000 of your people, please, in exchange for 100,000 kilograms of iron ore. Right? They could actually think like that. Aliens are alien. Right? That's one of the most important things. And because of the Fermi paradox, we might be one of the first. I mean, like, the actual age of the universe leads us to believe otherwise, because intelligent life should have developed on other planets by now, but we don't quite know why. We haven't detected any signs of that yet. We should have, if that was going indeed to happen. So it's actually imperative that we begin spreading right now, because frankly, we could encounter pacifistic aliens, we could encounter incredibly territorial aliens, and the more developed and more spread out and more advanced we are as a society and as a race, the higher our chance of survival when we do run into them. And also we've got to worry about the end of the universe itself, because the Earth itself is already like fucking, what, 6 billion years old or something? Like, how old is the Earth? How old is the Earth? 4.5 billion years. Right? How old is the universe? 13.8 billion years. Right? How long is the universe expected to last? 200 billion years. So we are, in terms of cosmic existence, into the first 10% of the existence of the universe, so to speak, from all models that suggest that we were. What happened was the Big Bang. Yeah, and exactly. Like, people tend to put their perspective on others, which is an incredibly important thing as well, because like we don't exactly know how the universe came to be. And like you talk about the like say like quantum foam, like a 0-point energy or whatever you want to actually go on about it. We could just be existing in a simulation. We could be existing in a simulation that was created by fourth dimensional or fifth dimensional beings, because we do experience the fourth dimension, which is time. But we could be like existing in a simulation created by fifth dimensional entities, and we would never know. I mean, you've got like little things that you can point to, like say for instance how matter randomly just appears out of nowhere in the middle of space, everywhere, and you can detect particles popping in and out of existence at the smallest level, and we can do that right now on Earth. And all that leads me to think of is stuff like, say, compression artifacts. So if we're actually living in a simulation, this is their universe, this is our universe, and this is what we're trying to make it. A little bit mind-blowing if you think about it like that, but everyone's perspective is equally valuable.
Less likely to tear. And what I'm showing you right now is something called the biosuit, which is designed by MIT. This looks a lot different than your standard environmental suit, doesn't it? And of course it would need an air supply and that sort of thing, but still, so much more efficient, so much easier to move around in, and therefore a lot less likely to end up in an accident. Look at the poor guy on the left, and if he tears his suit, he's got to rush back for help, whereas the biosuit is very...
Yeah. I mean, like, if you get a tear in your suit, that's when you use something called space tape. Space tape. It's basically duct tape, but for space. I mean, have you ever tried to box up cartons using duct tape? And then you're like, oh, I'll just buy for fun, you know, some boxing tape. It sticks better, right? Now imagine trying to use duct tape to like cover up a spacesuit like thing. The tape that they use in space is actually like a lot more expensive than duct tape because it's got to deal with temperature gradients. So like negative 200, you get an ordinary piece of duct tape and stick it into that temperature, it turns into an icy pole. Like you can break it, right? So you got to come up with materials that are tolerant to different temperatures.
To repair. This is something else we're going to need in order to survive on the red planet. And the last and possibly the most important factor is going to be the psychiatric nature, the mental well-being of the people who choose to live.
What do you think about the psychiatric nature of me being in space? What do you think would happen?
Here, since they're going to have to be living inside for much of their lives, their mental state is going to be preeminent. And in this particular case, this design called the Martia, that is very much taken into account. And by the way, I like these tall, slender structures because they're harder targets for meteorites. But that having been said, look at the interior views of the Martia. It's just beautiful, and with beauty comes psychiatric.
Do you want me to give you like psychiatric benefit? Like the military has understood for years that every now and then a servicemen need a drink, or something. And okay, so how many acres of yeah, exactly right. How many acres of green are needed for 1 liter of vodka? This might spin you out. Well, how much grain does it take to make a gallon of whiskey? Approximately... Ooh. So, 100 kilograms of grain makes 600 liters. So if we make 1 liter, what's 100 divided by 600? Is that right? So, no. Nah, that calculation's wrong. I know I'm calculating this wrong. How much land does it take to make alcohol? Alright, well, let's go into like an easier thing. So 6 kilograms of sucrose. How much or dextrose? How much land to make 1 kilogram of dextrose? I know I actually found this yeah, like basically I'd reckon by now I'd be like almost under constant surveillance because I'm already a military nerd. My dad was ex-military, and yeah, let's just say that some of my search topics are questionable to say the least. Especially looking up different things, like in terms of like yeah, like so. How much sugarcane? Ah, here we go. How much sugarcane to make 1 liter of rum? Okay, so 1 kilo of cane sugar is about 1.2 liters of rum, right? So, how much land to make 1 kilo of cane sugar? Here we go. Check these out. Right? Oh, come on. Okay, so it takes about 210 liters of water to make 1 kilo of sugarcane. Like that's straight up there, right? 210 liters of water. So when you're in space, I'm sorry, but the last thing you're going to be doing is making alcohol, unfortunately, because it's just, yeah, it's like the amount of land you need, the amount of water you need in order to produce the things that you need to turn into alcohol is actually incredibly high. So I'll go through here. Like bioethanol. Yeah, so 2,107 liters of water per liter of ethanol. So if you cut that down to vodka, that's like converting it from being like 100% down to like 40% or whatever. So you'd be amazed by just how much land footprint is used to actually produce alcohol.
Well-being. If you get to live in an environment like this, and on the occasions when you go outside, you get to see the gorgeous Martian landscape, that you probably fell in love with when you were a kid, dreaming about going to Mars. This is the sort of environment that's going to contribute to psychiatric well-being, which is going to be absolutely vital to the future.
And I'm not even gonna kid, like basically my one of the fondest memories of my childhood was having like SWAT teams, like Australian SWAT teams, move in and like pull my dad out of the house when I was a kid because he'd made a threat against some politician or another. My dad was basically batshit fucking crazy when he got out of the armed forces, and you name it, I've seen it all. Pretty much, that's the best way to put it. I love my country. I'm quite patriotic. I'm not like a lot of other people where they go on about capitalism or socialism or like a communism and all that sort of stuff, all the different ways of running a government. I don't really care. The only thing that I'm worried about, the only thing that interests me is quality of life. Do I work 8 hours a day? Yes. Do I get to have 8 hours of relaxation a day? No, not really. About 5 hours. Do I get to have 8 hours of sleep a day? Yeah, I could do that, but I usually only have about 6 to give myself a little bit more entertainment time. So, have you ever seen a moose with an AK? God, what have I seen with an AK? Have you ever seen a monkey with an AK? Here we go. I'll show you this, right? Monkey with an AK. Right? This is bullshit. Like, this is a meme, but still. I've heard stories from Vietnam veterans, right? I think just about anything with like a moderate intelligence could be trained to use an AK. So yeah, like in terms of weapons and all that sort of stuff. I mean, yep. Dolphins have been trained to use limpet mines. In the Navy. American Navy did experiments. They basically trained dolphins to go up to enemy ships and put mines on them. It wasn't very successful, but they did it, and it worked. They're a lot smarter than German Shepherds who were trained to run underneath enemy tanks. Because, well, I think the dogs might have been a little bit smarter in that area.
Gorgeous Martian landscape that you probably fell in
Georgia.
love with when you were a kid.
Which one? Limpet mine isn't an AK. Well, maybe, like, you might be able to train a dolphin to use something like, say, Russian Special Forces underwater rifle. It's called the APS. If you can figure out a way to get a dolphin to hold one of those, go for it. They shoot darts that are about like that. And, yeah. Yeah, but I reckon crows could use claymores. Right? Do you reckon you could train a crow to use one of these? I reckon he could. They'd be smart enough to use it. all they have to do is trip the tripwire. You show them enough times that, like, if there's an animal in front of the claymore, and they trip the tripwire, and whatever's in front of the claymore gets shredded, they'd fly down, they'd hit that fucking wire, and boom. No, like for food. Like, you'd have to show them how to use it, but like they could do it. Like they're smart enough, they're intelligent enough that they could do it to like use a tool in order to do it. Because a lot of different types of birds actually use tools, and some types of crows are like, well, crows and ravens are among the most intelligent. But like we've got these things in Australia, Australian crows. They're called currawongs. And they're fucking smart. They are really smart. Like they actually know you by face. Like like train stations and stuff, and like you might be able to, yeah. But I mean, you could do the same thing with a drone. So, it's a moot point. I mean, like, why would you use a crow when you could do it yourself? They're actually really intelligent. Extremely intelligent. I mean, I've got a cat that's very intelligent. He's, like, currently having a chill-out session. He'd be more like, I'm not going to set off that claymore unless you give me a scratch and feed me. I won't say his name because the instant I say his name he'll be like, huh? And I don't want to disturb his sleep because he's about 12 or 13 years old. I love crows. Yeah, so we have currawongs, which are like kind of a mix between a magpie and a crow. And a magpie, but if I can learn how to type with a cigarette in my hand, are these guys. And a magpie is actually related to a they're actually related to pigeons. Surprisingly. And pigeons are quite intelligent as well, but they're more like the sort of thing. But as you know about Australian wildlife, everything tends to get taken to extremes. You have willy wagtails. These guys, little finches. I used to, pretty much every place I've worked except for the place that I'm working right now. Nah, life probably wouldn't develop on Mars because it's geologically inactive. There's no tectonic movement and the magnetosphere won't take off. So, no, they're not. They're not actually. But what they do is like whenever I'd be having my morning tea, or my smoko, or my my first break, as you call it, at various places that I've worked, I'd be sitting there, I'd just be having a cigarette, and one or more of these guys that I get friendly with would come along, and would sit there and be sitting in front of me and go, looking at me and go, like making the sort of like the noise they make. It's like a weird sound. And whenever I had morning tea, they'd come up and like they'd say hello, how are you going? It's nice to see you here today. And then they'd fuck off before you, like, they have no reason to come up. They just come up and say hi, you know, like be social. They're social animals. Like that's what I'm saying. So like they're very social and they get used to humans as well. And it's the same thing with the like magpies, because you can, like, they come and they're not like pigeons, because they're very territorial. I'll just put it that way. They swoop you. And in terms of like crows as well, Australian crows, they won't, like, they're too proud to take food from you. But at all stages, especially like when I was younger, I've always been able to feed these guys by hand. So like I'd be sitting on a balcony somewhere, and I'd have one of these guys fly up and go, I'll have a little bit of that. You have a bit of like sausage meat or whatever, it'd be like, here you go, and they'd eat it out of your hand. And they get used to it, and they remember you, and like they remember that's where their food is. And then you teach them how to activate a claymore to get their food. Segue. But yeah, like genetic engineering and stuff like that, like getting animals to live on different environments on Earth, quite possible. With enough terraforming. And like cats and all that sort of stuff, like cats have been shown to not be very good in orbit, because they can't tell what direction down is. So like, you know, the cat experiment where you pick up a cat and you drop it and it lands on their feet? When you do that in orbit, they don't know how to land. They just sit there going, well, sausage mince has got blood in it, mate. Beef mince blood. Blood. But it isn't blood, technically. It's like protein and all that sort of stuff. It's more like a type of albumin, to be honest. And albumin, as you know, is what's in eggs. Surprisingly. Oh, fuck, I'm all out of booze. Alright, I'll be right back. Just gonna grab myself another drink, then I shall continue with my rant. This has actually been kind of a good stream, because I love talking about science and all that sort of stuff. Combination of Zench. A tit snitch. Is it Zench? Or tit snitch? How do you pronounce it? I mean, corn is like more cornflakes, obviously. But... Alright, I'll be right back. Just gonna quickly grab myself a drink. ETA 3 minutes, possibly. To Solch. Alright. To be honest, most of the distraction there of me actually going and feeding my cat as opposed to getting a drink, because my cat does take priority. I'll show you a couple of like interesting things about that as well. There's a a parasite that cats have, which actually makes humans more likely to interact with cats and be friends with cats and provide service to cats. Our cat overlords. Did I just say that? And it's actually really interesting because humans are actually parasitic. Like, we are animals, but we have all these things called what are they called? Fuck, what are they called? Can't remember. I'm not a biology person. Mitochondria. Mitochondria are actually not human DNA. We have these things called mitochondria in all of our cells, and they're actually kind of like what allowed us to evolve into what we are.
Dreaming about going to Mars. This is the sort of environment that's going to contribute to psychiatric well-being. Which
Psychiatric
is going
well-being.
to be absolutely vital to the future of any Martian colony. They just simply will not survive unless they want to.
And that's the key point there. I think, like, unless we take the challenge on, and like, the people who colonize Mars aren't going to be the sort of people who give up when there's a challenge, right? The people who colonize Mars are going to be the people who are predisposed mentally to take challenges on and meet them head to head, and every day is a challenge, right? So we're taking workaholics, we're taking, you know, people who just get up in the morning to say, yes, I've done this much, I've done that, right? Those are the sort of people who will survive on Mars. Whereas someone who just goes to work and says, oh, I've done my deals, are probably not going to survive on a Martian environment. There's one reason why I'm kind of perfect for it. It's like, I'm a workaholic. I love it when a job is done right. I work in logistics. I'm a forklift operator, heavy machinery operator. And basically, in terms of handling mass, that is my job. Move mass from point A to point B. And Australia is one of the largest countries in the world by landmass. And Australia runs by logistics. It's not like a small country like where fucking there's a port on every corner. You know, where like you got a train station, influx of goods, wherever. Like, we actually have to know how things work. So like, that's how we know like how many cubic meters of land, or should I say square meters of land, do you need to make a certain amount of corn sugar, or like sugar cane that then you turn into alcohol, and like how hard is it to actually ship that from point A to point B? Where do you distill it? Where do you refine it? How do you get it out to the customer? Where's it stored in the interim? Like, what are you going to put it in? Is it glass, or like, all the little considerations, like how people are going to be breathing like oxygen on Mars or like Venus or whatever? It's going to come in a bottle form. Like, is there going to be a truckie or a forklift operator who's going to be picking that up off a pallet? You know, they're going to be grabbing it from a piece of machinery. Is it just going to be piped straight into the network? You know, you're going to have like a liquid, like a natural gas system like they have in many European countries, how they provide heating for an entire city. Like, how is all your essential life support going to be delivered? Yeah, I know it's first game. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is me talking to the camera. Anyway.
Now, I'm confident that all the problems that I put forward here have solutions. When it comes to landslides,
Every problem has a solution.
Zone, which means we're really going to have an understanding of Martian geology. When it comes to dust storms, perhaps some sort of structure that can repel electrostatically charged dust, and maybe vehicles that do the same. Any problem can have a solution, but first we have to identify it as a problem. Stop worrying about radiation and worry about the real problems. So I hope this episode has shown all of you that although Mars is a very alien and dangerous world.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to put this straight out there because I know that this is probably going to flag. But yeah, Mr. Angry Astronaut, I'm very thankful for your streams and for your videos because they touch on a lot of points that I've been thinking about, and there's not enough outlet for people to look up this sort of stuff. I mean, it's all like in the area of voodoo, whereas the average person, the average tradesman, the average electrician, the average boilermaker, the average welder, the average powder coater, like the average engineer, the average astronaut, does not have information to look up this stuff, apart from a team of experts at Boeing who create the fucking shit and make taxpayers pay billions in order to say that a lump of salt is a lump of salt. So I straight up say there, thank you very much. Without you, we would be lost, and I think you should have far more subscribers. So hopefully this gets you out there a little bit more.
It's not a world completely unsuitable for colonization. It's simply the kind of place that does have dangers. And some of them are dangers that we can't really do a whole lot about, aside from simply avoiding them.
Managing the risk.
We can't live there. That doesn't mean that the notion of colonizing Mars is either impossible or impractical. And we need to dismiss these ideas, because spreading out into the solar system, as Elon Musk has said time and again, is the only way.
As NASA puts it, HACCP. Hazards Analysis Critical Control Points. This is typically used to refer to food safety, but it's also something that revolves around all different types of systems. And I'd like to throw a couple of other acronyms out there while I can. IDIOM: Initiation, Development, Implementation, Operation, and Maintenance. Initiation: Identify the problem. Development: Find a solution to the problem. Implementation: Create the solution to the problem. Operation: Use the solution to the problem. And maintenance: Upgrade the solution to the problem as necessary.
That the human species is going to survive long term.
I'm a systems engineer, by the way, and a telecommunications engineer by trade. That's what this card is. This card up here. This card up here. That's my registered cabling license, which means that I'm basically not quite a Sparky. It means that I'm a qualified telecommunications engineer, and although it has expired, once you're an engineer, you're always an engineer.
For good if we don't take the necessary precautions. Mars, to me anyway, seems like our best option, although there are other options throughout the solar system. We should explore those as well. But Mars has its dangers. It's an alien world. It has unique dangers that we have never faced before. And some of these very probably will kill some of the colonists who set out to make a life on this planet.
Now, on that note, where he's talking about life, and very likely the people will die, I'd just like to point out something rather, shall I say, dystopian, but still incredibly correct. What is the value of a human life? Based on NPR.org, it's about $10 million. And when you're in the military, the amount of training that they provide you and all that sort of stuff, that also has a cost value on it. So when they send you out into combat to die, they take that as a hit. How much money does it cost to train up a soldier to fight? A lot, put mildly. How much money did it take to train me as a telecommunications engineer? A lot. I've received world-class, A-class training as a telecommunications engineer, and it cost a fucking shitload of money to do that. And when I got close to actually doing it as a career, I didn't. I should have. That's not my fault. That's not anyone else's fault. But anyway, so the value of a human life is anywhere from $4 million to about $10 million. Right? So your entire life, from the point that you are born to the point that you die, adjusted by GDP and inflation, and adjusted by whether or not you're middle class, lower class, upper class. Okay? If you're middle class, values shall fluctuate. If you're lower class, the value will be a lot more than that. If you're upper class, you actually game the statistics. You're the one making it so that the value of a human life is more than like $1 million. So all I'm saying is that like, if we create like a colony on Mars, what is the value of a human life? What's the value of a logistics operator? What's the value of a heavy machinery, like a forklift operator? Like, what's the value of an engineer? What's the value of an electrician? What's the value of a horticulturalist, someone who creates plants so that people can eat food and breathe air on Mars? What is the value of a life? Now, as opposed to the value of a life, I'd like to come back at your question. Well, my question, I suppose, I brought it up. I'd like to come up with that. What does it require for a human life to be happy? 8 hours of rest, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of work. That's 24 hours, baby. And Mars has a 25-hour day. So, like, how many people would be willing to put that extra hour in? I know I would be willing. And I do it for free. Because as long as you give me food, you can put a roof over my head, I would work for free. Who cares about fucking money when you've got a roof over your head and you've got food? A lot of people don't even have that.
But then again, there are F5 tornadoes and incredibly powerful hurricanes and very powerful earthquakes on this planet that have ended people's lives as well. Does that...
I'll give you like a little bit of a personal example of like the sort of like situations that I used to work in. Middle of a thunderstorm, pissing down buckets in a storm drain. Thousands of liters of water flowing through it per minute. I'm blocking it. Strong enough that I could get a leg caught in it and drown in a pit in the ground that's over 1 meter deep, with lightning hitting trees nearby, using like PVC pipe or whatever to clear an obstruction, and yeah, like filling up dams. So like you got a storm coming, take advantage of it, right? What sort of advantage could you get from a storm on Mars? Electrical power generation. It's already talking about electrostatic discharge. What about using like different types of engines that can actually harness that and put it into battery form? Could you use kinetic batteries, like say like flywheels and stuff like that? Could you put it into hydrogen? Like, there's so many different solutions and all that sort of stuff. Legally, I'd reckon it, yeah, like basically like if Mars had its own constitution sort of stuff, and trust me, SpaceX, the first thing SpaceX is going to do when they get to Mars, they're going to put their fucking flag down there and say, they're going to say, this is Mars, stay the fuck out of our territory. It will happen, trust me, it will happen. Mark my fucking words, it will fucking happen. And you'll have like a 60-year-old on Mars who's the equivalent of like, you know, an 80-year-old on Earth. Right? And that's when you got to start thinking about like different time zones. Like, do you use Earth standard or do you use Mars standard? That's just where you got to start using your head.
Suitable for human habitation? Of course not. Every planet has its dangers. Every planet has its unique characteristics that make it dangerous. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to live there.
That's right. Good sir. It's not impossible. And we can do it right now. We need to use our head.
Our minds and our ability to counteract
or mitigate them.
Survive in the long term if we simply have the courage to do so. So, if you enjoy episodes like this, we went a little bit more into depth, I think, this time on the dangers of Mars and the things that aren't quite so dangerous. I've done it before, but that was a long time ago and it wasn't greatly watched, not a lot of views, and I thought it was good to bring this topic up again.
And I'd just like to bring this up again, right? This guy's only got 30,000 subscribers. Give or take plus 20. Like 2,000 or whatever. He deserves far more. Right?
If you like to see these sorts of topics, and also if you want to see this mug get destroyed, because...
Fuck yes, I want to see him destroyed! Basically, when this guy gets more subscribers, he's got a Boeing Starliner mug, and he's going to smash it. And I can't wait to see it. Because, like the whole SLS program, and Boeing in general, like basically everything that's wrong with the American space exploration program comes down to mega corporations that are not providing value for money. The SLS has already cost hundreds of times more than the SpaceX program. SpaceX has already put people in orbit for 1,000th the cost of the American space program. They're putting people in orbit. I think that the future of space exploration is commercial, and I think that when it comes down to it, depending upon whom is at the helm, commercial space exploration may even be an advancement for humanity in terms of socio-development. I might be wrong though. It could get worse.
Although I very much enjoy the coffee, I really want a different mug. And we're so close, 8,500 subscribers or so to go. Help me do it. Subscribe to this channel, like, and also if you want to support what I'm doing and keep this channel going, it's all in the description. There are many ways to support me, and I hope that you're able to, but if not, certainly a subscription or a like, it would be greatly.
Do I sit there? Do I milk subscriptions and likes like that?
Finally do have the courage and the innovation to overcome the dangers that the alien world of Mars has to present to us. Until we are ready to confront the dangers of the red planet head on, because that's what's necessary for our species to survive in the long.
What he said just there is that it's absolutely fucking key. It is what's necessary for our species to survive. Stephen Hawking said it. I say it. Elon Musk says it. This guy says it. Everyone else who actually knows what they're talking about says it. Right? We have to. Like, it's just unavoidable. It's something that we have to do as a species to survive long term. And if we don't, it's because of bureaucratic bullshit that we don't. Get rid of, like, once we're on another planet, the economy, so to speak, does not exist, really. There's a simple economy. Relaxation, enjoyment, work, survival.
Long term, I urge all of you to stay
Angry about space! Yeah, so I hope that anyone who watched that stream actually enjoys it. And yeah, this will be something that I keep up online, because I don't do enough streams about like what could be potentially well, earth-shattering, really, in terms of like where we're going as a species. I should make more videos. Let me know if you'd like me to do that. Not that I have enough subscribers to do that, but I should be making more videos about the bioengineering. I should be making more videos about like ethical genetic engineering. I should be making more videos about space exploration and colonization. I definitely know enough about it to do it. And yeah, like essentially, like the thing is that the reason why we have these platforms to start off with, like YouTube and Twitch and all that sort of stuff, is so that other people can learn from the experience and the knowledge that we have to offer. We have a very different society now as opposed to back when people used to just read books and go to university and all that sort of stuff. Right now, you can be the equivalent of a professor just by watching YouTube. And that, to me, is amazing and mind-blowing. And I think that we have got a lot of potential as a species. And I think that all the young people are growing up right now. I think that YouTube and like even Wikipedia, I mean, like the things that people have access to today means that as a species, our engineers and our scientists and our dreamers will be a lot better off for it. And this is why we need to continue upon the path that we've set ourselves and continue with the pure application of science. But also remember that the human angle here is that we cannot just sit on our laurels. Okay, there is a very specific path that we have to take to make sure that we actually extend ourselves beyond this planet. And like it's beyond just working the 9-5, right? I mean, it takes people who are willing to go above and beyond, decide, oh, I want to be a physicist, or I want to be like a rocket engineer, like you know, I want to be someone who actually like sees Earth move off from being just stuck on this one single little planet and spreading throughout the solar system. And that is what I think that a lot of the younger people these days have an access to. I wish I was born 70 years later, because if I was, I might have a very good opportunity of being on Mars. Unfortunately, I already know that basically by the time that any of this stuff happens, I'll probably be dead. And I won't have the opportunity to do it. And I straight up have a very good experience of how this develops, because I like building chainmail. And I think about people who are making chainmail back in the Middle Ages. And I think about the tools and stuff that they were using to build it. And I think about today, where people are making things like this out of things that are microscopic, or even nano, down to the nanoscale. I mean, the very computer that my processor is running off is on a nanometer scale. Pretty much. Anyway, yeah, so I shall end that there, and let's hope that everyone continues to grow wise. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you can. Like that's gonna happen. If I ever get famous on YouTube, I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But at the same time, you know, I think personally that there's hundreds of thousands of other people out there doing stuff like this. Probably less people in terms of the technology sort of like area. And that's probably my main disappointment, is because more people should be using this as a, not so much of a creative outlet, but like we should be pulling together our resources. Like stuff like YouTube is kind of like the new Wikipedia. I mean, you can learn how to do stuff on Wikipedia by reading it. It's like, oh yeah, this is this, this is that. But like YouTube is one of the only things that like lets you sit down and like really think about it from the like the different angles and like the different aspects. I'll be back on soon anyway, because I've got to get back into gaming. But yeah, I thought I'd do a proper science one for a change. Back soon. I'm also a futurist.